I look at the way the game industry has succeeded in the past, and that's really cool that they were able to do those things and create these AAA studios. But the world is constantly changing, and I just don't understand the people who are like, "Oh, this was the way to do it. This succeeded. This is how you should do it from here on until forever."
Is everything over? Shall we give up on the gaming industry now? Shall we stop trying making games, building studios and companies that have the power to positively impact the future lives of millions of players, professional and humans? No, we don't. In this special track of Rise and Play, I will be focusing on the unspoken topics around building game companies, founders teams, fundraising, pitching, rebouncing after closing your studio company or losing your job, by bringing guests who are going through the same storm of 2024 like you, and keep fighting. I will also share openly my own process, trials and error, and step-by-step building the new game company Killen as the first-time CEO of a game company. I believe we are stronger together, and we don't have to go through the storm alone, because at Rise and Play, we are not alone. Oh, and one last thing, as you feel supercharged by listening to this episode, it will mean a lot to me, and if you haven't done it yet, that you hit the follow button. It will help with the discovery of the show so other people can benefit from the content too. Thanks, and now let's get to the episode.
Hey, I'm Shelby Maladina, and I'm guest hosting for Sophie Bow on her podcast, Rise and Play, this week. And I'm here with Ayla Derrick, the founder of Cave Bear Games. Sophie and I have been talking recently about all of the amazing leaders she's had on the show. And Ayla came up in conversation because I've been following her journey and Cave Bear's journey since they showed up in my feed on LinkedIn about 3 months ago, and have really become visible and active since then. And I'm really excited to be here talking with Ayla.
Hi, Shelby. I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's been really great to get to know you over the last couple of months. I'm so glad you're here, and I'd really love to hear your story of how and why did you start Cave Bear?
Yeah, so I started Cave Bear because I wanted to make a game. I came from an education background and I just joined the games industry. And by joined, I mean decided I wanted to work in the game industry in October of 2023. And then Cave Bear Games has only been around for, I think, 3 months now. But I just wanted to make a game. I had an idea. I wanted to make it. I knew I couldn't make it on my own. I was going for narrative design as a writer. And I knew I couldn't program and I couldn't art and I couldn't do a lot of the things on my own. I'm not a solo dev for sure. And thankfully, I was in a community where I found a couple of other of my core team members who wanted to also make a game and they were willing to volunteer on this project. I found a few more team members and they convinced me to make a LinkedIn and give ourselves a name, Cave Bear, and make a website. And then when I posted on LinkedIn, it blew up entirely. It completely went viral. That has never happened to me before. It was very shocking and very fun to experience with my team. I remember we were literally like on a full team call when we were going viral and we were just like watching the numbers go up together. It was very fun. And yeah, Cave Bear is a studio by and for juniors. I think that's really what appealed to the LinkedIn community because there's quite a few juniors like us who are looking to break into games. And so they really liked a studio that was very specifically about games, about juniors. So that's really where we came from and where we are now. We're working on our game, Plantasia. And now, because of our viral success on LinkedIn, I'm also looking for ways to give my teams jobs. Originally this was supposed to just be a portfolio project to put on our portfolios and impress people and get a job in games. But now there is a possibility that I can give my team members jobs. And if I can do that, that would be amazing.
That's amazing that you've done this and very inspiring. I've been in games over 20 years at this point, and of course, people have always asked me, how do I break into games? How do I get a job in games? And my main advice has always been just make stuff right now. Don't let anyone stop you. Don't wait for permission. But at this historically terrible moment in the game industry, there are more people without jobs, more people either laid off or aspiring to get in, and the job market is horrible. Sometimes there are thousands of applicants for each job. And So the usual advice of, okay, put together a portfolio, make stuff, just make some games, that isn't quite enough if your outcome is wait for a job to give you permission. And what I love about what you've done and what's been so inspiring is you didn't wait to organize, you just did it. And I think that is something that a lot of people are really inspired by.
Yeah, like I said, I was trying to go for narrative when I first pivoted into the industry. I'm building up my portfolio. I'm trying to figure out what to put on my portfolio, what kind of projects, and everyone is telling me to make a narrative twine game. And I'm like, oh, that's all good and dandy. I don't really know how to do that. I don't have any formal education on game design. And also, I personally don't really like narrative games. They're not something that I play despite being a writer. So when I had an idea for a game that I thought was good, I obviously knew that I couldn't do it by myself. And there were plenty of people who wanted to help me. And I'm very thankful for that. And something that our studio provides for us is that studio environment, that team collaboration, cross department collaboration skills that you see on junior job postings as skills that you need. But how are you supposed to get those skills when you don't have a job in a studio, right? You've never had a job in a studio. This is one of the ways that I think you can do that. So I highly advocate for volunteer teams. Make your own studio, go and do your own studio or join someone else. You can do solo dev if that is really truly you. People are very, very successful with that. Not something that I can do. And I acknowledge that. And that's okay. I definitely work better with people. And so there are many ways to do that, but you really just have to go and say you're going to do it and do it.
When you start something like this, where you don't know what you don't know, and you know you're going to encounter all kinds of things you've never encountered before, there's definitely an internal grit and flexibility that you need. So, not everyone's journey will be exactly the same, but what types of things have challenges and learnings have you gotten in the last, say, 3 to 6 months that you didn't expect that have really opened your eyes, given you a sense of growth? Where has it been hard? Where has it been a little easier in this journey?
I will say a lot of people come to me with the question of how to find a team in order to do a volunteer project. That seems to be the hardest part for a lot of people. For me, it was the easiest part. The team was very easy to find. There were a lot of people who wanted to volunteer on a project. And thankfully, my idea, I think, was good enough that several people were originally willing to jump on board immediately when I was just by myself. And so I'm thankful for them. So that was one of the easier parts. One of the harder parts is, all this business savvy stuff. And I'm not business savvy. I'm not an entrepreneur. This is the first time I'm doing anything like this. And so those millions of little tiny things like the legal stuff about how to become a business, I just simply had no idea. And the thing is, I had so little game design and game industry knowledge when Cave Bear first formed that I'm constantly learning. And like you said, I don't know what I don't know. And so I rely very heavily on mentors. I connect a lot with people on LinkedIn, and there are so many people, really, the whole entire game industry is extremely willing to help. So anytime I have a question, I find a new mentor or I find an old mentor and I talk to them. I'm constantly speaking to people who have experience in the game industry, who have done this before. And while I listen to their advice and I take it all to heart and I think about it, it also doesn't mean I'm going to do exactly what they tell me to do. I am my own person. I am trying to do things my own way. And so while these mentors are hugely valuable to me and my team, because all my team talks to mentors as well, because again, they're all juniors, they're all learning, we also try to do things in a different path than a lot of the game industry has done in the past. And so I'm more open to, yeah, forge my own path, make my own trail and do things that I believe are best for my team and best for our development. I've learned a bunch. There's been a lot of hard things. Numbers and math are hardest for me, so making the budget and the pitch decks have been very challenging, but things like team collaboration have been really easy for me because I really enjoy people and I love my team.
Yeah, that's really key trait for everything from how do you process feedback on your game playable to how do you build this company, and that inner sense of hearing advice and then distilling it into what you believe it really means and how you can really apply it and how much of it you want to discard because it's not quite right for you. Developing that sense is really, really important. And I know that's easier after 20 years in game development. I have like 20-year backlog of mistakes I've made that I've learned from and give me a better gut sense. But to do what you're doing off the bat and to trust yourself internally without as much of a backlog of PTSD, that's a really unique and inspiring thing. And how do you think you developed that internal North Star and gut that you trust? Like, were you born like this? Did you just pop out with this internal sense, or what kind of helped you learn that and start to trust yourself?
Yeah, much to some of my family's chagrin, I've always been someone who learns from my mistakes. And in order to do that, I have to make many mistakes. So I'm constantly being told what is the best way to do this thing or how to do this thing. And while I hear and I listen and I understand, I still experiment and try to figure that stuff out on my own. So I make a lot of mistakes, but I don't make the same mistake twice. Everyone's different. So why am I going to do the same thing as this other person when I think I can do it differently? But also, I don't think I was born like this. Sometimes I like to think I was, but I wasn't. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people can probably resonate with this is it was less about having people that I looked up to and more about having people that I didn't want to be like. You know, so many of my family members just, are unreliable narrators or very controlling or just not having a lot of faith in me or what I'm doing, and I've had to grow up and trust myself because I can't trust these figures, these adult figures. Because I always knew as a child that they were wrong and that they were lying or they were, just not how I would do it. And so when I try to think about, oh, what is the right way to go about life and what is the right way to do things, I thought of what is the opposite of how they do these things. And so as soon as I was old enough to start making my own decisions, I really ran with that. I'm very much a person who doesn't like being controlled and being told what to do. I think that helps because I am like the leadership position of my studio now. And so I'm not being told what to do, but I do get a lot of suggestions. I do get a lot of advice. I do get my team members telling me what they think. And I have to kind of intake all of that, distill it, and then have that trust in myself and my experiences to make these decisions that may or may not go well. I've been very lucky. I think my decisions have been good so far. That could blow up in my face any day now. We will see. But yeah, I think I have a lot of confidence. I have a lot of faith and trust in myself and my team members. And so I'm not very worried. I don't stress out a lot about it. I'm not very worried about failure. I yeah, I failed a lot and I'm not scared of it.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sorry that you had that experience earlier in your life. And I think it's really amazing that you took that and turned it into a strength and a bedrock for you to work from. I personally know at least one or two of my best veteran game dev friends had a similar sort of situation where they've taken that adversity and turned it into a place that they draw strength in themselves from because they had to. That's how you survive. And so I think that'll be really amazing for a lot of people to hear because not everyone has that sort of like perfectly supportive family environment to kind of let them grow into who they are. Another thing you said that was really, really interesting and I want to talk about a lot is the ability and willingness and lack of fear with making mistakes and how personally I've found that I would say like everything I learned in game dev is from a mistake that I made at some point. And it gives you that kind of gut sense of what to avoid, but also that resilience to know like if you're going to make mistakes, it's okay. That's how you get there. It's how you iterate and it's not going to kill you and it's going to be all right. That's really important. And I'd love to hear you kind of talk about that some more about how that feels for you and how are you fostering that in your team and yourself?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I learned coming into game design is iteration. And my mentor, Alex Brazy, who is the community I was in and found my initial person to join my team, iteration, like being able to just put something down on the paper, get it done. It doesn't matter if it's good. It doesn't matter if it's pretty. Just put it down and then you can build on top of that and you can iterate that. And I realized that that is something that I have been doing just in life in general, But now I do it in my studio as well. We are constantly pushing to just get things down. It doesn't matter what it is. And I've had to kind of teach some of my other team members that who haven't been in game design before and didn't have that knowledge and experience. And so that's been a hurdle for some of us. But I think they've all really grown with that. I know my designer, specifically Tanner, is absolutely a genius and a hidden gem. He's so smart. He has so many good things and good ideas. It's really insane. I'm so lucky to have him. But he had absolutely no experience in game design. I literally found him like the week he decided to come into game design. He was previously in the competitive gaming industry. But yeah, I definitely had to kind of help him along the way of like just get things down, just, write how to write documentation, how to communicate with team members. And so everyone has their own, strengths and weaknesses. And so it's my job as the leader to kind of help them identify those things and figure out the tools and supports that they need in order to improve on those things. And also, like, if something isn't meshing, if something isn't working out, then maybe that's not something that they should be doing. We should, edit their role or bring in someone else or do something differently to support them properly. There's no unicorns. There's no one who knows how to do everything all at once. And providing an environment where they feel comfortable to express things that they're uncomfortable with or things that they don't feel good about or things that they're struggling with so that we and me as the leader can work with my other team members to figure out how to support them and how to make them the best that they can be in this position has definitely been something that is very prevalent throughout the entire development process and this entire experience that I've had over the past 3 months.
I think it's so important how much of a focus you have on people and growth and management and culture from the very start, because the seeds of culture are planted and set at the very beginning of a company. It's much harder to change it 5 years down the road or several years down the road. And I can see how much care and joy you have in creating that type of environment for your team and seeing them grow. I know in some of our conversations, I hear the pride you have in your team's achievements, and it's not all about an individual. As you said, the game development is so collaborative. And one of the things I think that you've talked about that is so key is being a leader who's willing to show up as a human being who is not perfect and who makes mistakes and makes that okay for the team as well to make mistakes and to have that psychological safety that they're not going to be in trouble or blamed if they don't know every single thing perfectly.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I spent most of my life feeling like I was in trouble all the time. So I'm very interested in not spreading that kind of environment to other people. And yeah, I very much believe, anyone can do the job if they're provided those supports and tools as we talked about. For Cave Bear specifically, my involvement as the founder has created that culture, right? So, because this was just supposed to be a portfolio project, I came into the project with very strong opinions and ideas, not on the project itself, but how I want to run it. Now that we have a lot more eyes on us, I think it's even more important for me to continue with those morals and those ideals. I have very strict rules for myself and how I behave in life in general. And so some of those things fall then into my studio and how morally I want to run the studio and how morally I want to deal with my team members and how morally I want to not discipline them. Like I'm obviously not disciplining my team, but if there's a failing, then there's a different way that I want to approach that rather than firing someone. Like as a teacher, I know that everyone can improve, right? So why not just invest a little bit into them, have a conversation, figure out what they need, where they will blossom and kind of go in that direction instead of just giving up on them entirely.
Yeah, I think that's really important in a studio and in life to understand where someone can succeed and put them in a position for that and to sort of not try pushing the square peg round hole. That doesn't always work and it can be frustrating for everybody. So I think that that time you spend to grow your team is really important. And how did you come to a sense of what the right number of juniors and volunteers for you to manage at this phase would be, that balance between you've got a team to manage and grow. You need enough people to build the game, but sometimes adding more people makes things harder. So how did you sort of come to that
The
point?
very first thing I did was determine which departments I valued the most. And everyone's going to have a different opinion on this. Please don't blame me for this. But as a narrative, I learned that narrative is often unappreciated. And so I was like, I want narrative in there immediately. And narrative was actually my first role to be filled. And then some of the obvious things like a gameplay designer and a programmer and an artist. That was the original core team. And then as we kind of worked on the game and worked on our processes, I realized we needed a little bit more. I had learned that a lot of volunteer studios or just little teams who are making a game, they try to combine a lot of departments. Like one person will be doing production and art, and one person will be doing programming and gameplay design. And that's great if you can do that. But I wanted to focus more heavily on individual departments. And then I had production. We actually did have production pretty early on, but that was our only turnover. So we onboarded a new producer a little bit later than everyone else. And that has been extremely important. I don't think we would have gotten this far without a producer. My producer Alyssa is amazing. I love her. She has learned so much and done so much for us that we are, making a game properly and relatively on time, maybe because of her. And I appreciate that. And then as it grew, I just listened to the needs of my team. My programmer came to me and said, we probably need another programmer for this. We're talking about a lot of cool things. And I can do all these things, but if we want the timeline that we have set, we're probably going to need another programmer. And while I was, initially not super into that because I didn't want to expand the team much because all of my mentors were telling me to keep it as small as possible. And I felt like 5 or 6 was already too much. So it took some it took some thought, but eventually we brought on a second programmer, and then eventually we brought on a UI person because UI is really important. And then we brought on a community manager and then another community manager. And now we are up to, I believe, 11 people. So we're a little bit bigger than I wish we were with 11 people, but it's really just about looking at your needs and your weaknesses, right? What holes do you need to fill? Which departments do you value the most? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to that. Every department is going to be like, my department is the most important and should be staffed first. And that's great. And they're probably right. But as a volunteer team, I don't have the resources to manage all these people and bring all these people on.
I think that's really key to pair your values and your instincts with flexibility to roll with whatever the game and the project throw at you or whatever develops. So your company, for example, having two community managers this phase, that's very different than my startup, Double Loop Games, but we didn't have the type of viral community going on that you're dealing with from the very inception. So it makes a lot of sense. As we were kind of talking about, you've got 10,000 followers at least on LinkedIn for Cave Bear, and I know you run a Discord, and that's a lot. How have you been managing the multiple jobs as a founder where you've got the internal team, you've got the external, really, you've got the business to manage, you've got the external funding and financials to think about, you've got this like very interested community. How's that been for you? How have you dealt with all of that kind of incoming so quickly?
It's been really fun. I have ADHD, if I didn't already mention that. So having a lot of hats means I have a lot of things I can bounce around to and from. And as for the community, that's been really amazing. I brought on a second community manager because I knew that my original community manager needed some support. And so now we have two, and it's amazing and it's great. But the community really hasn't been that difficult to manage. It's more about like, I want to continue that like notice on us, those eyes on us. I want to keep them on us and I want to expand that because our community right now is almost entirely devs and game industry people, which is amazing and great. But I also need some people who are interested in our game and going to buy our game when it comes out. So my community managers, are working on trying to figure out how to get that consumer audience. Whereas I am working on how to support my existing community of game devs. So, like you said, we had 10,000 people now on LinkedIn. Originally, when we went viral, we had 2,000 overnight. So that was, but we were continually, constantly growing. So when we made our Discord, which was immediately after going viral because we realized we needed one, we have about 1,500 people in the Discord right now. 1,100 of those 1,500 have the Discord role that identifies them as someone who is willing to volunteer on a project. So I know that the vast majority of my community are juniors or other people looking to work on a project. And I also knew that I didn't have 1,100 positions open on my team. So, in order to kind of support that community, I started the Partner Studio program where, on this journey, I also learned that there are a bunch of other indie studios that exist on a volunteer basis, but for some reason or the other, struggling to find team members. And all of a sudden, I had this very dense audience of people, of team members, people who wanted to, to volunteer. So the Partner Studio program is me just inviting them, those indie studios, into this little private community where they are then able to advertise their open volunteer positions to my entire Discord. And I know that there's over 20 indie studios that are part of the program now. And a number of those have posted on our Discord looking for team members. I know one studio, WTTW Games, has grown a lot since we partnered up with them. And I know a lot of their team members came directly from our Discord, and they are, seeing some more success in on LinkedIn and stuff like that now because of us. We got lucky going viral, and I wanted to do something with that. I wanted to kind of share that love, spread that love, and help other indies thrive as well alongside us. I don't feel like there is a competition between us. I don't think that's true or accurate. I think we can all survive in this space together. So I wanted to kind of bring them with me along the way. And hopefully that's what the Partner Studio program is doing. It's going very well so far. People seem interested in it. And yeah, hopefully we can get some projects for some of those people who want to work on them.
Yeah, I think there's so much valuable there that you're doing with creating that community, connecting people. It's really interesting that Cave Bear has been so visible and maybe the other ones are harder to find because it sounds like there are definitely a lot of volunteers out there. I wanted to also mention, so my husband and I each have co-founded startups at different times. And at each of those times, it was really, really meaningful and important that we connected with other startups that were kind of same-ish size at the same-ish time because those peers are the only people who will be going through the exact same market forces at the exact same time you are. And it's kind of like having like a sorority or fraternity of people that you've been through it with. And I'm really glad for you to have that, that you fostered that so much. I can definitely say those people are the ones that I relied on emotionally when Double Loop was really looking like we were going to run out of money and have to close down. And, people have just really been there for each other and it can really develop into a really, really supportive network both ways. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. We have a private chat with all the indie studio founders who are in the program. And, they tell us about the struggles that they're dealing with, from the community or from internally or whatever hurdle that they need to jump over currently and they're having trouble with. And, mentors are a huge deal to me. So I'm always looking for mentors for both my team, but now I'm able to kind of direct those other studios to people that I know that might be able to help and also, look at their experiences and learn from their mistakes and their experiences as well, and bring everyone down the path all together with me to hopefully succeed. And it's really been amazing. And everyone has been so amazing in the Partner Studio program. And I really hopefully it'll continue to grow. I know like 20 studios is a lot right now, but I'm sure there's more. And I hope more will pop up because of our community and our server and our studio. So it's definitely the time for indies is now. So hopefully you get that hint and start on your own project.
There's a cycle that a lot of us have seen in the game industry, being in it for a long time. I would say currently, right now, the amount of layoffs and company closures is historically terrible. So I
Yeah.
want to say that in the past, when there have been rounds of layoffs and studios closing down, it's painful. It usually ends up seeding some indies. And then the cycle is those are very creative. Some of those make it and the others sort of absorb into them or others. So I think one thing that's cool that's down the road is likely that maybe not every one of those 20 studios is going to stay as distinct things, but those may be groups of people that you pull together into different kind of hotspots where you work together on projects. And it's just an interesting cycle that there's this like fertilization, seeding, and then growth together that can happen. And I'm really excited to see where that goes.
Yeah, I've never actually even considered if that's something that would benefit them, if that's something they're interested in, for sure. I certainly don't see why not. There's a lot of studios in the program now that are doing similar things or have similar missions. But the thing that makes it really cool is that we're all trying to do something a little bit differently than someone else is doing. So there's always these initiatives or these programs or these events that, they'll share with us and we'll be like, oh, that's really cool. Like, happy to attend or be part of that because we think it's important and good, but it's not something that everyone else is doing? So
Yeah,
like, yeah, I'm doing the partner studio program, but no one else is doing that, but they're a part of it. But then I know Rafter Games is doing some cool events and stuff. And I'm like, okay, yeah, happy to be there for them. Yeah, it's an amazing community and I hope it'll continue to grow.
definitely. One of the examples that I think back on in Eugene, Oregon, there was a studio called Dynamics, which was the Sierra studio. And it was several hundred people. And one day, everybody showed up at work and the doors were chained and people couldn't go in and everyone was laid off. No notice. But these hundreds of developers lived in Eugene. Many of them wanted to stay in game development, didn't want to move away from Eugene, and a whole bunch of startups were seeded over time. Now, I'm not saying like immediately you're going to join with all these other studios, but over time, what happened was there was, for example, a little studio that I got my first game internship at called Brave Tree. And eventually it and the leadership were absorbed into Garage Games. And some of the other studios went away, some of them still existed. Buzz Monkey was one that was bought by Zynga. Pipeworks is still around, but a lot of them consolidated into Garage Games. And then eventually Garage Games was acquired by somebody else. So it was a very interesting seeding of this community where companies merged together. The community knew each other at all these different iterations, and it helped sort of seed a whole new bed of growth for games there that and much greater variety of roles and types of games and things. So I've seen that happen in a way that is very painful at the start and
Right.
can turn into something wonderful over time in ways that you wouldn't expect because you never know which ones are going to be successful. Successful being, they continue on in their original form, but sometimes together is better.
Yeah, that is interesting. I hadn't thought of that. But I mean, I do know, obviously, like you said, we're in unprecedented times with the game industry and all these layoffs. But, with everyone I have been talking to and all these mentors that I have been speaking with, the time for indies is now. With all of these layoffs from these AAA studios and all these studio closures, there's going to be less AAA games coming out in the next year or so. And that means that there will be more room for indies to shine and be on the front page. So if you've ever thought of making a studio, I really recommend thinking about starting it now. It's a lot easier than you probably think it is. I know nothing. I came into the industry literally less than a year ago from a completely different industry. I still barely know anything, but I'm succeeding nevertheless because of my motivation and my passion for it, right?
Sometimes a fresh perspective is the way to break through challenges because you just don't even really acknowledge that they're there and you find an end run around it. And I'm really interested in the way you've approached the studio in a way that is like, cool, not gonna worry about VC right now. We're gonna make this. And I think there's probably a lot of other ways people can figure out a new and different approach. I also was thinking back on my career, and there have been multiple times where I was hired for one job, but as a new person with fresh eyes, I was able to look at processes that were maybe ingrained and could be improved and work on improving those. And then I was often promoted within like 6 months of that job. And that kind of like fresh perspective is a really nice place to really look around and be like, okay, I'm not dealing with a 50-year calcified system. Like, how are you going to start? How are you going to make it great the way you want it to be?
Exactly. Yeah. Because I am so new, I am so fresh. I have different ideas on how I want things to go. And especially since I have, full control over my studio, I want to do things differently than the norms of this game industry right now. Like I said before, I have very strong rules and morals, and I look at the way the game industry has succeeded in the past. And that's really cool that they were able to do those things and create these AAA studios. But the world is constantly changing, and I just don't understand the people who are like, oh, this was the way to do it. This succeeded. This is how you should do it from here on until forever. just don't agree with that. There's always new people, there's always new ideas. The world is constantly changing. And so I am going to challenge that as well. And I'm a little bit privileged to be in a position where, if we don't get funding, that's okay. The original volunteer agreement for my team was a 6-month project for portfolio. That was before we went viral. That was before all of this stuff happened, before, funding and a job was even on the table. So, if we don't get funding, that's fine. We can go our separate ways with a fantastic portfolio project. But now that it is a possibility, I am looking at ways to do it in a way that I feel good about for me and my team, rather than as, a company who's just trying to make money, because we're not trying to make money. That really wasn't the whole point. If we can get money, that's great. But if we can't, that wasn't the main goal.
Yeah, that's interesting. When your goals are different, that implies a whole bunch of different ways of working. Like if your goal is you're a venture backed company and you must return 100x on their money, that is a very different set of motivations than what you're going for with portfolio stuff that can grow into other things. One thing you've talked a lot about that is really important is it's the idea of iteration, and how iteration is obviously like ingrained in design and development. You make something test. But when you start applying and expanding that into top to bottom your business, then it's really, really powerful. And one thing I've been doing since I had to close my studio, Double Loop Games, at the end of 2023, that was really heartbreaking. And I took some time off and I decided to work on my hobby. It also started as a hobby, making films.
Yeah.
And that grew into a much larger project that I'm working on, which is a narrative web series about an indie game dev team. It's fiction, but comedy, but very real. And I've had to be in a similar position as you with learning the whole thing top to bottom. And that's been exciting and overwhelming and all things. But I just wanted to mention that since I don't know the way film is made, I didn't go to film school. I'm also taking this game centered iterative approach that is a little different than the way people make films. And I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but I know it's unique. And I know that I'm trying some things in ways that aren't normally done. And it's really, really satisfying and interesting to see what happens. So it's interesting that you and I have sort of like switched. I came out of games to do this other thing, but that point of learning a business top to bottom and everything is new and everything is overwhelming. And I know I waver between like being energized by that and being overwhelmed by that, but it's a really interesting place to be.
Yeah. I mean, you can think about doing things forever and get absolutely nowhere, but in order to get anywhere, you have to do something. And that's definitely where the iterative approach comes in a lot into my studio. And also just the way that I do things, my entire time in the game industry so far has been networking and constantly speaking with people. And while networking isn't really something I did before, because I'm an introvert and I don't know what happened to me when I joined the game industry, but suddenly I can talk to everyone. But, I bring in that education where learning is super, super important in order to improve, instead of just like faking it. Well, I do fake it till I make it, but I fake it until I make it in a way that like I am constantly learning about the ways that people have done things in the past or the opinions that people have, and then editing that to my experience and my goals. And so education is a pillar of our studio, along with communication and passion. And communication also is a huge thing in my life. I'm very open and honest about pretty much everything, probably to a fault sometimes. But in a team, you need to be able to collaborate and communicate with your team members as openly as you can. And as a leader, I need to be able to communicate with my team members, my employees, or whatever, in a way that makes them feel safe, feel heard, and feel like I'm working for them, which I am. I'm very excited to say that Plantasia so far has really helped people. And while no one's landed a job yet, there have been some interviews where Plantasia, the game that we're making, and Cave Bear have been a huge benefit to their case and to their application. And while, again, I still hope that I can give them jobs myself, I'm also really excited for them to just get jobs in the game industry in general.
Yeah, having that collaborative experience to talk about in an interview just completely changes the tone where you're not
Frankly.
sort of having to grasp. And you also said something about networking, which I really believe and experienced as well, which is the idea of like networking where you go somewhere just to network, where you're like, hello, I am, and you're pitching. Like that's such a different place and not as natural as what you've encountered and where I'm at with my show too, which is like once you're talking about something from a genuine point of view and passion, and it's not like a crafted message. It's like people really respond. People want to talk about things that you're passionate about, especially in the game industry. I think, or at least the people I enjoy are like made up of people who are passionate about stuff. Like they have many interests and I want to hear about it. I might not be into that specific passion, but I want to hear about it from you. And
Yeah.
I think that's what you're kind of touching on and connecting with when people want to help you because you are coming from a genuine place of curiosity and passion. And it's not the same thing as sort of like a robotic sort of outreach sort kind of thing.
Yeah, and obviously, like, as a founder of a studio now that has a lot of eyes on it, I get so many messages every day, like cold outreach of people asking for a position, asking for a job, asking for something or the other. And while I want to help people as much as I can, and that's why I created the Discord and created the opportunities channel and created the partner program and all that jazz, networking is a little bit of an art. I know that people want jobs and hey, I'm right there with you. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm not making any money. In fact, I am losing money. So, maybe I'm not the best person to ask for a job. But the thing is like if I look at your message and it's just like, "Hey, I'm hoping that there's an opening for a job on your team, and here's my portfolio links and all that jazz." I'm like, "Well, like I can't offer you a job. I don't have jobs to give because we don't have any money and we're very open about that fact that we're a volunteer studio." And so what the messages that I'm interested in is when people message me and they're like, "Hey, I really liked this very specific thing about what I heard on this post and I wanted to know more about that because I'm, struggling with this thing. Like I want to help you. Give me a reason to help you that is genuine. I know that you are passionate about something. That's why you're cold outreaching to me because you are passionate about getting a job. I will point you in any one just direction that I can think of, but I want to be able to help. But if you just say, "Hey, I want a job and here's my links," like I can't help you there. That's not something I can help with.
Yeah, that's good advice. And it's also great that you've set up the Discord as sort of a overflow for all the
Yeah.
people that you can't reply to individually. I've had a similar experience with like hundreds of DMs coming in and I've missed a few. And I always feel bad because it's like even the ones who were specifically someone I wanted to talk to, sometimes I get a little flooded. So sometimes a reach out is helpful. And I was just thinking of someone, you and I have somebody in common who's working on
Yeah.
both of our volunteer projects, a woman named Stephanie Torrero, who is one of the earliest people who responded to one of my posts about the project. She's an amazing UI artist from outside of games who wants to move into games. And so for my show, she's been creating like fake website screens and a fake banking app screen for the phone. And she's done an amazing job. We shot a test pilot she did this work for. And I think it's so funny because then we found out she's also on your project.
Yeah, she is. Stephanie is definitely the poster child for cold outreach. She did so very early on with Cave Bear as well. And I can't remember exactly what she said, but it had her portfolio link in it because I remember going into her portfolio and being very impressed with her work, specifically on the Orbro Express game, which is on itch. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but it was like an Art Deco theme, and her UI was amazing, so beautiful. But yeah, I wasn't looking for a UI, so I very politely told her, like, "Sorry, not interested. Like, maybe we'll be hiring UI eventually." And she said, "Okay." And then, a little while later, she came back to me. She said, something else. And I was like, I really like your work. And I kept her in mind. And I was like, we will need a UI person eventually. So, I'll keep you in mind. And she said, well, that's great. But here are some reasons why you might want UI as soon as possible. And it was very much not like self advertising. It felt like a genuine piece of advice that she wanted to share. And, Stephanie is great. She's extremely motivated, the most motivated person that I've seen so far in the game industry, actually. I thought I was moving quickly. She's moving even faster than I am, and she's succeeded so many times already. I was very happy and surprised to hear that she had a position with you, and I was surprised, but like also like yeah, that makes total sense. She's the best, so I'm extremely happy to have her on the team.
I am too. She's been such an awesome person to beyond the UI work that she does. She's been pretty foundational and just sort of cheerleading the project and talking about it along the way. So that's been a lot of fun. Yeah, I wasn't surprised either. We're kind of growing more and more people in common. When I think when you start to develop this network of people who are doing things. They're doing it, they're making it, they're shipping, they're iterating. Like that really is the separation between people who don't quite make it, people who want to but don't create, versus the people who get out there and just create. And that's true in games and film and any creative pursuit, that it seems like I encounter 90% of people who really want to do something. 90% don't just do it, but the 10% or whatever percentage it is that just do it and then also finish the thing and get it through post production and get it shipped. Like that's the real hard part. And that's what really separates people who are really going to do it. And it's really exciting to have this kind of community cross pollinating and getting to know each other, people who are brilliant and like yourself and Stephanie and all these other people, brilliant and motivated and doing things. And I know I'm really excited to follow along with you and Cape Bear Games. I know you've got a long and awesome career ahead of you. And I'm really excited to see what Cave Bear and you do over the next months and year.
I am also very excited. I talk very confidently and, our numbers look good on social media and all that jazz. But, behind the scenes, we're making a game and who knows if it'll be good. I hope so. I am also very confident in my team. They're all so smart and so talented. So I'm not really worried about their ability to create an amazing game. If anything, I'm more concerned of my ability to lead them to the finish line. I have always been someone who loves to start projects and hates to finish them. But this one is a little bit different because I have a whole team next to me with the same goal. That's extremely, extremely helpful. Like I said, with solo devs, I don't know how they do it. They have some motivation that I simply don't have. I can't do this alone. I would not be able to do this alone if I had my game idea back then and you know, I was like pitching it. I was just like kind of telling some people about it and be like, yeah, if you want to like help me out, let me know. If a couple of weeks went by and no one was interested, I simply would have given up and not be here today. So I'm very thankful that a couple of people were like, yeah, let's do this. And they've kind of cheered me along. The team is so important. It's like we are constantly, cheerleaders to each other. Every week we have a team meeting and everyone tells everyone what they did that week, and we're always celebrating like our artist who has an art drop or audio designer who has another track that's amazing or a programmer who implemented this really cool thing or literally anything. We're always so excited about it. So yeah, lean on your people. Find people. If you don't have any, there's no reason for you to do this alone unless you truly want to. Some people are really good at that, but I know a lot of people aren't, and there are plenty of people, as my Discord proves, who want to do things like this. So find them and do it.
Yeah.
Wait for someone to give you permission.
And you mentioned earlier about having ADHD, and something I see a lot on social media are questions, people who are like, what type of career is good for someone with ADHD? And I just wanted to touch on that because I think 9 out of 10 game designers that I know are self identified as having ADHD. And I think one reason the game industry is so good for people with ADHD is that things that work for ADHD brains are deadlines, the peer and the partnership of not wanting to let other people down. And when you're sort of in your own room, you can get kind of like, it's funny as they say people with ADHD do really well in like emergency services jobs, like being an EMT, but also working in
Oh,
games is a lot. It hits like a lot of the same triggers. And so I like to mention that when people are kind of wondering about where do I fit as a neurodivergent person. And I think, like you said, there are different ways of making games. And for some people, one way works. And for some people, another way works. And one thing about the game industry is there's just like every game is different. No two games are ever made the same way or by the same two people. And that can really, really work for some people.
yeah. What works for me is obviously the team spurs me along to actually finish this. But I'm 27 now. So it's been a while since I graduated high school and graduated college. And I am only just now, literally October of 2023, is when I discovered the job, the field that I wanted to be in. And then with the start of K Bear Games is the specific role that I really love, which is creative direction and leading this team. And my ADHD, being the founder and the creative director, I'm allowed to have all these ideas and tell people the things that I want, and then they are able to go and do them. And so, in some ways, it sounds very selfish that I'm just like, yeah, I'm forcing them to make things that I want. But the thing is, they like those things and they enjoy doing those things. It speaks to their strengths and their interests. And especially with neurodivergent people, ADHD specifically, like what you are interested in is what you will do well on. And that's what I was struggling with the past 10 years was I did not care about education. I cared about the kids. I just didn't like anything else about it. I went into college for education because I simply didn't think I could do anything else. I didn't know what else I could do. And then I, continued with that after college and it was fine. I did a good job, but I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it. And now, I'm not getting paid, but I can't even imagine doing something else. I'm like, "Oh, I need to get a job and make money." But also, bro, if I have to do something other than like games or other than what I'm doing now, I'm going to be really upset and I definitely need to be applying for more jobs, but it's really really difficult to find something that is better than what I'm doing now because this is simply the best thing that I could be doing.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good message for people that it can take a long time to find what really motivates you and what job is a good fit. And also the idea that even within a role like producer, there are actually many different ways to be a producer. And in my past, there was a good run of years where my specialty was start and shape a game, run it through alpha, get the processes going, and then hand it off to someone else who was going to do the more tedious, like get all the bugs fixed, put it through submission, all of those
Yeah, that
things.
sounds amazing. I want that job.
I know. And it's like I felt that what you were saying, I felt kind of guilty. I was like, what really? I'm giving you the hard part. But actually it was just a pairing of two people's different strengths and skills. And
Exactly.
that's when like a team is magic, when you can really complement each other.
Exactly. And I feel obviously there's never ever going to be a complete perfect match when you have 11 people on a team, but we all enjoy each other. We all enjoy the game we're making. And yeah, it's really been beautiful and really just so amazing and such an experience that I never thought I would have. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Like I said, I'm supposed to be looking for jobs, but I'm just not because why when I could do this is so much better and I'm loving life, having absolutely
Yeah.
great time. I'm by far the happiest I've ever been in my life now doing this.
That's amazing. And I know you know this, but there's a lot of studio founders that may feel like when a company maybe doesn't achieve its original goals or has to go out of business, that can feel like a super huge failure. And one thing that you've talked about that I believe strongly as well is that the time that and the culture and the experience that you gave to people is ultimately the real value. Like you're giving them months or years of experience and an example of a non-toxic workplace and good relationships. And whether or not the outcome is financial success, I think the real gold and value is in that time that the company is together. And so that's something I also try to think about as well. I'm devastated that I don't get to continue working with my double team because it was the best team I've ever worked with. But on the other hand, I feel good about what Emily and I did with creating a culture that was safe and creative and efficient. And I believe that that can seed better behaviors and cultures in the rest of the industry. So I know you're not at a place now where you're necessarily thinking about the downside, but I do want to highlight that the time that you're giving them right now is incredibly valuable.
I completely agree. I mean, that's why this was a portfolio project, a volunteer portfolio project to begin with, was because it was all about the experience. And it was never about the money. It's never been about the money, and it will continue to not be about the money. We are, exploring options that involve money, of course, but it is not the main thing. I've always been someone my entire life who just doesn't care about money. And some people have told me that that's a privilege, and I agree to an extent, but I also think it's a mindset. Money rules the world. Obviously, we need money. There's no question about that. But when you lead things with passion and motivation instead of money, 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 things just go better. Everyone's happier, everyone's more motivated, and they're more passionate about the project. And when you're more passionate about a project, it's going to end up better, probably. And so that's just kind of how I view the world. And I hope that I can help pave the way for a new approach to game design, a new approach to forming a studio, and hope to make the game industry a better place and a more fulfilling place as well.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. I mean, I know that you've already touched so many people that may not have even reached out to you about it, or even people you don't know that you've touched. I know that you have, and you'll inspire more people to do what you're doing or do something new, forge their own path. Well, it's been really amazing having you here. Is there any last advice or anything you would like to ask people to do? I know joining your Discord is the best way to get involved and hear what you're up to.
Yeah, the Discord is definitely the best place. LinkedIn, of course, we have a lot of people over there already if you're mostly interested about our studio itself. But like I said, we have 10,000 people over there. I love each and every one of them, but I would really love people who are interested in our game itself. We're in super early development, so we haven't been able to kind of build up that consumer audience yet. So if you like cozy, idle, plant growing games in a solar punk Mesoamerican theme, we would love to have you.
I love all the words that you just said, all of those words.
Yeah,
Steampunk,
exactly.
cozy, plant. I love it, all of it. You're saying my
Exactly,
words.
yeah, so if you're interested in the game, LinkedIn will not be the place to go. You can of course go to our Discord, but we are starting to expand to other social media channels like TikTok and Twitter and Reddit and Blue Sky to tell you more about the game and bring you art and bring you audio and bring you inner workings of the game itself and maybe play testing too if you're interested down the line. But yeah, we are really excited about our game. We're really excited about our studio and we hope to have you join us.
Well, thanks for your time. This has been really awesome getting to chat with you about all of this. And I know we're all going to be rooting you on.
Thank you so much. It was so exciting to be here. I had such a great time.
Yeah, me too. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this latest episode of the Rise and Play podcast. I am growing a community of conscious leaders across the industry and beyond. If you want to join this movement, please share the podcast with other conscious leaders because we have so much more we can learn from each other. If you've enjoyed this episode, please follow and rate the show on Spotify or your other favorite podcast platform. It will help other growing leaders to discover the show and benefit from the valuable insights. If you would like to grow rapidly your leadership skills, you can find more insights on riseandplay.io, where you will also find my free masterclass on conscious leadership and other resources that I offer. Have a great week, and remember to take care of yourself. Until the next time.